We're talking about all things Broadway. We're going to be talking... There you go. I went to Spamalot on Broadway. Mike's going to review the Waitress movie and Prince of Persia. Can't wait to talk about that movie from 2009 that was problematic then. And now your host, Mike Indiglio.
Jake Gyllenhaal, everybody. Welcome to K&M Geekly. Just a sneak peek at two geeks doing way too many things concurrently.
Hit the button, Mike.
Work,
hit the button.
Without hitting the button. I'm Mike Indiglio. That's my good buddy, Keith Varney. We were having the most serious of conversations mere moments ago, and we've shifted into something different. Although
that's showbiz.
That is showbiz. We are both looking old and gray. I'm going to apologize right up front. I'm still recovering from the COVID, Keith.
Yeah, you got the vid.
You had it a few weeks ago.
Sure
I'm
did.
Getting through it now. I'll say this. I wouldn't have even... COVID has, much like us, Keith, it has shifted and changed over the years.
Got a little softer around the middle.
We've hopefully you haven't, but I know I'm you, the general you, but we've had it a couple of times, and so you think you know the symptoms that you would remember the next time, because it was pretty bad the first two times I had it. And this time I just thought I had a cold, and then I went for a run, and now generally, like on a bad day, I'll go out and I can put together 3 miles and feel like generally okay. But I went out for a run, and about 1.5 miles in, I had to stop because I just, like, my body was just shutting down. It was like, you can't breathe, and this is bad. And that's when I was like...
Yeah, that's me without COVID.
Right. And I was like, that doesn't feel right. And then 2 days ago, I was drinking my coffee, and I was like, oh, I can't taste this. And that's when I knew, because I've never had that symptom before. I've never had that can't smell or taste.
No, I never did either.
Let me tell you, it's weird. That's really weird. So I took the test, and the faintest of lines appeared, and then that faint line became not so faint. And so let me say this, because I've been boosted from the beginning. This bout of COVID was nothing but a mere cold, Keith, and that is because of science, not in the face of it, friends.
Thank you, science.
Yes, because of those who've tirelessly worked on said vaccines and boosters. I feel pretty good today, so thank you, science. But anyone who is also suffering from COVID, take it seriously, y'all. It doesn't mean you can go out and party because you're feeling good. Anyway.
Oh, yeah, no. It's it is no surprise. You went on a cruise ship on Christmas. Of course you got COVID.
I fought through the whole time. I was really... for me, what's interesting is a lot of people have been very easily able to go back to regular life, and I have too. I go out and about and I do the things. But man... listening to people hack and cough, like in a buffet line or in a theater performance or whatnot, still triggers me. I'm looking to see who's coughing, and I don't know if I'll ever get over that. I hope that I do.
Well, for good reason. Somebody gave you COVID.
Yeah,
no surprise there. We should say we are before we move on to our next thing. It's Martin Luther King Day.
It is,
and
yes.
I hope everybody takes a moment to reflect on that. And, here we are. We're thinking about...
What do you think the news will cover today, Keith? Martin Luther King Day or the Iowa caucuses?
Oh, very much the Iowa caucuses.
Yeah.
But, that's important, too. The race to come in a distant second. Whoo! What's going to happen?
This is Geekly's generally, we try to keep it pretty light, but I'm going to say this coming year we're going to have a lot of conversations on this show about that, I suspect, because it's...
Well, I mean,
we're nervous, man.
Nervous? I'm surprised I haven't pooped on my white chair.
Well, yeah, you see a little
Shouldn't have gotten a white chair. That's what I'm saying.
Little column A, little column B. Okay, so first things first. Next week, Keith, on Geekly, we have some unboxings to do because I'm getting some shipments tomorrow from Decade Awards. So that
yes,
we can do that next week. I don't know how exciting it'll be, but you brought it up.
The most
so
exciting. Look, I got them right there. Those are. What, hold on. Can I do it? Those are all of my fantasy football trophies.
In my life, I've only ever won one trophy, Keith.
Now you've won 3.
Yeah, I've got a couple medals, but no trophies.
What was your trophy for?
My trophy was a rowing trophy, for the Bill Braxton Memorial Regatta in 1999.
Wow.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks, you were on the crew team? You must have been so bougie. You were in the Schuylkill, let's be honest.
We were in the Schuylkill, yeah. That's exactly where I won that medal, too. And interestingly, it was the regatta because all the good teams around us, it was so cold, they decided not to go. They were all scratches. So it was just 3 boats showed up, and we were one of them and happened to win that day. That's the only...
Everybody gets a medal.
Very bad. We were very
Hilarious.
bad. So, that said, let's go ahead and talk about our first topic this week, Keith. With a little sugar, butter, flour. So I forget what movie I was seeing originally, but as I was walking out of the movie, I heard the score to Waitress, and so I walked in to a showing of the Waitress movie, which is a adaptation of a 2000. You know, I closed my wiki. Hold on.
The Jennifer Aniston film Waitress.
Incorrect. Carrie Russell. Carrie Russell. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I take it back.
Written by Adrian Shelley, produced by Michael Royf, and it was 19. Wait, what? No, it was not 1981. That's 2007 American comedy. Okay, which was a movie that I had seen back in 2007 because there's that indie flick house on Lincoln Center. The Lincoln Center, like little indie screening there. Anyway, loved the movie, which is a very sort of very indie film. It had a really dramatic plot about this waitress who is in a very kind of abusive relationship, who is pregnant, who is saving money to escape her loveless, physically abusive relationship. But it used tonal inconsistency about this affair she has and these needle drops that are very on the nose at times, very juxtaposed to the dramatic scenes taking place that was sort of the offbeat way they handled that. It was made into a musical, I think, 2016-ish?
That sounds about right. Let me look it up.
The score written and composed, lyrics and such by Sarah Bareilles, and I don't know who wrote the book, but I'm going to find out. Sarah Bareilles wrote the book, and Jesse Nelson wrote the book, and Sarah Bareilles wrote the music. I had never seen it on Broadway. Keith, did you ever see Waitress?
I did not see it live. I did see a boot.
Okay. I had never seen the show. I'd barely heard the score outside of the two numbers you generally hear, which is Sugar Butter Flour, which is the opening. Opening up was sort of the one they did on a bunch of performances. And also She Used to Be Mine, sung by every woman and man ever.
That's ever sung, never anything ever.
And love those two numbers. And I believe when they began to sort of stunt cast it by bringing in, I think Al Roker played like the one guy, and then they brought in a bunch of...
They brought in a lot of people, stunts. Yeah.
To keep the show running. And I think there was a duet you would see between her and the doctor. Anyway, I just never got around to seeing it. And so when the movie came out, like I said, I walked in, and the first thing I noticed within 5 minutes of watching the middle portion of the film, of the musicalized film, which is a recording.
So are you going to be reviewing the second half of Waitress, the musical?
No. I did go back and watch it. I want to give the context.
Okay, all right.
It's important to the final product. So they did film I think the end right before they closed. They filmed the Broadway show while Sarah Bareilles was in it, and I think it was filmed over 2 or 3 nights, like they generally do. And there are a couple of, just like they did with Hamilton, they did, for some close-ups, they did film it also without an audience so they could get right up on stage with the cameras and get some close shots. And that, when I walked into the theater and caught just the middle portion, was what I saw. Was just a director, the movie... I'm so unprepared.
Unprepared for Geekly? We would never do that.
Yeah, you're right. The director, I'll save it because I'm about to put him on blast, clearly loved these onstage shots, and there was so much cutting, whip cuts, close cuts, wide cuts, and you could tell it was so obvious when they were cutting to on stage and then just like piping in audience reaction to like make it seem seamless, and didn't feel seamless. Great cinematography or direction, you shouldn't notice. It shouldn't be the thing you notice first in a musical.
Yeah.
And so I remember texting you right after that, and I was like, ugh, because I walked out. I didn't really walk out. I really wasn't supposed to be in the first place. Anyway.
You continued walking out like you should have been.
A friend of mine, Jeffrey, it doesn't matter who my friend is like best college friends with Sarah Bareilles. And so I saw all on his timeline, just like his immeasurable love for her performance in the movie, which makes sense, they're buddies. But I was like, well, he seems to I got it on the DVD. So I put in the Blu-ray. Me and Jen start to watch it. And in the first 10 minutes, I'm like, oh man, this is just going to be all the cutting. It's like so much cutting, so much cutting. To the musicals and the performances credit, after about 20 minutes, I forgot all about it. And what I really love about this is that it's so faithful to this movie, which is ballsy. Instead of having the needle drops be the tonal inconsistency, the way they sort of frame the heavy drama of the central arc is by the secondary characters and the secondary subplots being sort of really goofy and really comedic. I mean, huge. Whereas the title character here, played by Sarah Bareilles,
it's pretty grounded.
Really grounded.
Yeah.
What I like, I'm all for collaboration, but what I like when the same person writes the music and lyrics is that there is a musical consistency across the whole show, right? Whereas there are some shows where are written by a bunch of different musicians that you can feel it. The score is so the score. You might like it, you might hate it, but it is uniquely itself. You can hear a couple of tunes and that's
the score
Sarah Bareilles.
Is the score, folks.
It's Sarah Bareilles. It is Waitress. I probably could hum you 3 songs from the show. I mean, as far as like bangers, there's only a couple, but the consistency is comforting because you feel in good hands. I found the performances pretty much across the board to be incredible. Sarah Bareilles shocked me. Now, I guess in it, we've talked about this before. To perform in front of stadiums of people, you have to have a charisma, and she definitely has that. She, in many of the songs she sings, especially the kind of 11 o'clock number, She Used to Be Mine, which has been just sung by gajillion people, it's clear they took the take that had the most acting rather than the best vocal. She is invested. Mm-hmm. There's some guttural sounds. It'll never be Jessie Mueller, let me tell you. That woman is just a freak of nature. But
used to be mine.
I loved it. I loved her performance, and the show really won me over. It's got a lot of heart. It retains the sort of themes and the love and the just kind of offbeat indie nature of the film. And I was really floored by how charmed I was. And I even got a little weepy, which isn't saying anything because I cry at anything. But
true.
I had every intention to put this on blast from the get-go. And I can't do it. I really enjoyed it. And I think the film, the cinematography is beautiful. The sound mix is great. Is it over-directed? 100%. But that's just what they chose to do.
It's what the kids do these days.
We need to film more musicals like this. So we've got Waitress, we've got Hamilton, we've got Come From Away. What else do we got? Not a lot.
Diana.
Yeah, okay. We need to film more good musicals this way.
Yeah.
And I really was charmed. That's what I'll say about Waitress. That was 20 minutes of talking like around and about, but I really loved it.
Well, I'm glad. I look forward to seeing it.
Yeah.
My buddy Eric is in that show.
Who is he?
Eric Anderson, the
doctor,
the cook guy.
Oh, he's great. He's great.
He's always great.
Cal, yeah.
Cal, yeah.
Oh yeah, he was in the show forever, I think.
Yeah, he did it. He went out to do Mulan, and then sort of came back for the movie version. Yeah, he was in Fired back in the day. Yeah. So I also have a Broadway review because yesterday I saw Spamalot, the Broadway revival playing right now in the St. James after transferring from the Kennedy Center.
We're now old enough that we're seeing revivals of shows we saw the original companies of.
I sure did. And I got to speak a little bit about the original company of Spamalot because if you didn't see it the first time, let me just read for you the cast of the original Spamalot. Hank Azaria making his Broadway debut.
Patsy, right?
Patsy. As Lancelot.
Lancelot, right.
Tim Curry as King Arthur. David Hyde Pierce. Christian Borle. Michael McGrath. Rest in peace, my friend. Sarah Ramirez in her breakout role. Chris Sieber. Steve Rosen, like all of these people were in the original. Kevin Colbert, another friend, in the original production of these things. Unbelievable.
Here's what I remember from watching that, sitting in the theater watching that. that stacked cast, and then watching Ramirez steal a show.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I mean, which is the numbers written for that, but to watch a performer just stop a show stacked like that, I remember being
opposite that cast of all people
was really something just to see and to be a part of.
Just I mean, it's incredible. So
Chris Sieber was in that one, right?
Chris Sieber was in that, and even some of the people they had coming in as replacements. I mean, Alan Tudyk came in and did it. So cool. Anyway, so obviously, Spamalot is based on, it's an adaptation of Monty Python's Holy Grail movie, and written with a musical score with Eric Idle from Monty Python and John Dupree. So it really depends on. I mean, let me first off just say very clearly, it's a great production. The cast in this one is really excellent. Alex Brightman, Chris Fitzgerald, who you just saw in the Waitress movie, James Monroe Englehart, Leslie Kritzer, of course, Ethan Slater, Michael Urie, and Nick Walker were in this cast. So it really depends on how did you feel about the show itself? I mean, outside of the blazingly amazing cast, how did you feel about the show itself?
You know what I remember, I thought it was very funny. I thought it I'm not sure. There's such non sequitur humorists that it doesn't make a ton of sense. I guess it's either your cup of tea or not. But I will say, as Casey Nicola always is such a tight director. I thought it was a great, a tight production. Who directed the Revival?
Revival was directed and choreographed by hold. So here's my feeling.
Wait, did you say the name of the person?
Yeah, Josh Rhodes.
Oh, it didn't come through. Okay,
yeah.
Sorry.
So I think my feeling about Spamalot in general, and this has nothing to do with this cast or the other cast or any of that, because this is a phenomenal cast. They were spectacular. Is if you grew up and you'd seen all of these sketches 1,000 times, right? I have a hard time really hooking. It's funny, right? But it's like funny, like you've watched the special. It's like watching somebody else do your favorite comedian's bits that you've heard 1,000 times. Mm-hmm. And so even if your friend is really funny and he's doing great bits, right? It feels like warmed over leftovers a little bit, because I know all the lines, I know all the bits, and it's not even the original people doing it. So, and I think there are times where people are super successful at like bringing something to it that wasn't there originally. But like I know all the bits, I've seen it all, and even though these are amazing performers, I'm like, why are we doing this? So I think I enjoyed it, I liked it, but I think just because of what the show is, and this has nothing to do with anybody doing it, it's just it's kind of just rehashing stuff that's been done by the legends themselves, and the timing and the Britishness of it all. Mm-hmm. These are all American actors and they're great, but it feels a little bit like you're supposed to be you're laughing to the memory of the joke more than what's happening in front of you. Now, I do want to say that some of the performances in this Kritzer, who I've also worked with, like, she also crushes this show. She also steals the show just like Sarah did and sings the bejesus out of it. It's really, really impressive. My D&D buddy Nick Walker was hilarious and great. And Michael Urie is
always
phenomenal.
Great. Yeah.
He's phenomenal in the show. The only thing I'll say about the show is some of its humor plays great, and some of it is, I think, a little problematic now. Mm-hmm. And there's two numbers in particular that I sat there trying, like, through the entire production number, trying to figure out, how do I feel about this today? You know, the big giant Act 2 production number, you can't get anywhere in Broadway unless you have some Jews, right? And I'm like, I see where you're going. I see that this is coming from, this is not coming from a bad place. It's coming from allies, it's coming from whatever. However, like, do we need to be playing into these stereotypes right now? You know, in this horrible, scary time of terrible anti-Semitism and Islamophobia and sort of everything phobia, except for white people, right? Like, I get it. It's not coming from a bad place, but it is a little bit like we're doing the fiddler thing. We're like picking out all of these like ridiculous stereotypes, which we're poking fun at, but also sort of leaning into. And I'm like, oh man, I don't know if this feels. Did I notice it in 2005? No, I didn't. But today I'm like, I don't know if this is landing quite the same way. And the same thing with Lancelot coming out. I love him coming out, right? But the jokes, again, just sort of playing into the laziest of stereotypes. Both of them, but both of the songs. It's not that you're referencing this, and it's not that you're playing with stereotypes. You're just playing with the laziest, lowest hanging fruit, right? And like, my name is Lancelot. I like tight pants a lot, and like, come on, like it today. You know, feels.
It's a really interesting point you bring up, and I don't want to. Well, whatever. It's our show. So, I've been thinking lately a lot about, you know, I've always pretty much given a pretty blanket defense to stand-up comics. I think we've talked about it on this show, and how it's sort of the last bastion of like pure freedom of speech. And, you know, a lot of stand-up comics lately have been being put under the microscope for some of their transphobic comedy, insert, you know, marginalized group here.
Phobia of your choice. Yeah.
But here's the thing, right? Whereas I still believe there's some protection, and there's you can make jokes about whatever you want, right? That's your choice as a stand-up comedian. That doesn't mean the audience isn't allowed to change their tastes and reframe the way they hear things. Like what they might used to, like you just said, what used to be funny, that type of humor might not be funny to them anymore. That's not necessarily an indictment of the comedian, but it's just the audience, like you said, rethinking the way they look at comedy and different jokes. Jen and I just rewatched Rain Man, which is, you know, and whereas I think Dustin Hoffman's performance, I watched it with a really critical eye because I was like, oh, this is not going to have aged well, right? I think it did. I think it's still a really nurtured performance, and I think it's really still a beautiful film. Yet, you wouldn't make it today, and you wouldn't have that same. It would be done with a different sensibility, and I think it's fine to watch things that way. And as a creative, if you're going to revive something and choose to keep all of the things the same, then you have to be willing, and you have to kind of stick your flag in that and be like, okay, you have to recognize things are going to be viewed differently. And I think that that's just kind of where we are. And I think that's a good thing.
Well, and I think that, you know, I know that the some members of the Monty Python have gone pretty far out in planting a flag, refusing to revise stuff, which I disagree with, because it's like, you know, we've talked about this before, but like, I guess because it came up in culture today, right, about the comedians, right? Of course, you have the right to make whatever joke you want. You can say whatever you want. However, these comedians who are complaining about it believe that they are entitled to say whatever they want. Yes.
Without repercussion.
However, you are not entitled to do it without consequence. You are not entitled to an audience. Mm-hmm. You are not entitled to people thinking what you're saying is funny. And like, sorry, buddy. Mm-hmm. You know, like, you can say whatever you want, but also people can react to it however they want. And when you're punching down, and you know, and that's a little bit overused, but I think like when you're just lazy, like my problem with these jokes here, they're punching, you know, they're punching down ish, right? They are lovingly making fun of marginalized communities, but it's not written by the people in that community, right? And you're also doing it in a lazy fashion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, gays like to dance. That's a really lazy joke.
Yeah.
Right. And you're just, I'm sorry, you are not entitled to not have consequence for your shitty jokes, right? And your transphobic jokes or whatever. And it's like, sorry, buddy, that's lazy and it's mean-spirited, and go to hell. You have every right to do it, and I will argue forever you have the right to do it, but I have the right to think you're garbage because you're continuing to. Now, does that mean that we shouldn't allow people to grow and change? And that, the joke we said 30 years ago, to give people who made that joke foolishly then a chance to grow and learn and adapt and change. I think it's important that we give people a chance to rethink and grow. Like, I've certainly said things and made jokes I wish I hadn't made, in my life. But I think as long as people have the integrity to keep examining that and keep growing and changing and adapting. I mean, I'm as I'm rewriting I Got Fired right now, there's stuff in there I'm like, oh wow, yep, I see that differently now, and I'm not going to tell that joke again. I'm not going to do that because I can do better than that. I think that was offensive. I should have known then. I didn't mean it didn't come from a bad place, but I should have known better. But now I do, and let me adjust to that and try to aim a little higher. And I think that
two comedians I'll point out that I think over their lives and careers were able to slightly adjust, course correct, but never stopped being cutting or saying whatever they wanted, and were so skilled at how they said things that you kind of knew when they were just kind of making a joke or when they were making a social commentary. One obviously is oh my god, the 7 words you can't say.
George Carlin.
Carlin, right? Like, Carlin said whatever he wanted to say, but he always was making a larger commentary, right?
Well, it's where is the joke targeted? Who is the victim of the joke?
Completely different. Don Rickles. Don Rickles said ish that you and I would never even say on the internet, right? Just like about marginalized groups, but he always did it in such a way, I'm a comedian, work in a room way, that it never even watching some of his old stuff on the Tonight Show, which is just like, oh my God, you shouldn't be saying that. He just had a way about him. And some of the more old school guys, I think they used to do it better than the guys today doing it. But that is not what we're talking about, I guess.
Yeah.
But anyway, so. And it's funny because that's kind of how I ended up feeling about the original too. It's just a lot. And a lot of times when you just take too many great people and put it in a very unfocused show, that's what you end up with. You don't really know what you're supposed to be latching onto.
And I think this comes also to the bigger question of the musicalizing other material.
Yeah, well, that's the era we're in, Bubby.
And it very much is. And like the good ones make it something different.
Yes.
Right. You do the fan service, you honor the things that we've come to love and enjoy, but you add something to it. You make it different. You don't just make the scene a song and then go. Right. You have to make it you have to adapt it into something deeper and bigger. And this just sort of added some songs to scenes we've seen 10 trillion times already.
Yeah, but in 2007 or whenever it first came out, that's even sticking Monty Python on something was, that was marketing right there. But here it was huge. It was a huge 2024, success. The question becomes, what were we trying to mine, right? Broadway's in such a weird spot right now.
Well, I mean, but Spamalot won the Tony. It was great. I mean, it was a huge, giant hit. And you had a production that was at the Kennedy Center that was successful, and they brought in an all-star. Like, all right, let's just bring it in for a limited run for New York. Like, I get it. I totally get it. And it's good.
Is it a big production, or is it how's it feel? What's size wise?
I would say it's like medium.
St. James, right?
It's a St. James, which is a big old theater. Yeah. It's not as giant a cast as you would think, but it wasn't a 30-person cast.
Right.
But it has an ensemble. It has some folks in it, but the production itself is not particularly elaborate. Because it's it's a limited run, so pick up and go. But it's supposed to be funny. That's the whole deal. So anyway, that's way too many words.
Yeah.
On Spamalot.
So a shrug from Keith. No, he liked it.
Yeah, everybody doing it was great.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the
think that's
direction was
clear.
good, performance was great, the design was great. Like, Ed, I just sort of I feel about the show itself.
Well, Keith and I are going to see next Wednesday. We are going to see Sweeney Todd. So I guess not next week's Geekly, but the following Geekly, we're going to talk about that. We're excited, and we're going to get to see an all skate for the covers. So I'm really excited about that. Okay, so lastly, Keith, talking about revivals, if you will, I want to talk about a little video game I started playing. So you might recall in 1999, Keith. I don't know if you played PC games back then, but one of the first games I remember getting on 5 1/4 floppy that I would play at school or wherever I could get a drive was the 1989 game by Jordan Metcher. Who was it released by? Let's see. Broderbund, who also released, if I'm not mistaken, Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego?
Oh, classic.
This was a side-scrolling action-adventure platformer where you would try to avoid spikes and go down, and it was really kind of one of the first really animated type of side-scrollers for a PC. I remember just getting my ass handed to me on this game. It was radically difficult. It was called Prince of Persia, and the animated sprite character was as white as hell. And then there was a bunch of sequels, and I didn't really pay any attention to that again until, let's see, 2003 on the PlayStation, I believe, where another version of the game, Prince of Persia, Sands of Time, was released. And this was heralded as sort of one of the big action platformers of the PlayStation era, because not only were you jumping around doing all this, swashbuckling and platforming, but if you fail, you also had the ability to rewind time and kind of redo things and use that to manipulate puzzles, and it's heralded as kind of a classic.
Interesting.
There was a bunch of sequels to that I didn't really pay attention to, and then the franchise had a really bad movie, and it pretty much was shuttering, and Ubisoft was losing money on it, and it seemed like it was kind of done for this world. But then out of nowhere, last year they said they were going to release this new Metroidvania version of Prince of Persia called The Lost Crown. Everyone thought it was going to be terrible. They released a demo. I played the demo, Keith.
Mm-hmm.
You can watch that playthrough today on our Patreon.
Oh, there you go.
At patreon.com/K&M. It spiced my curiosity enough that I am a member of Ubisoft Connect. So I started the game 2 days ago. I have 5 or 6 hours in anyway. I'm loving it. This game is very much a Metroidvania. So there's this huge map. You're uncovering it as you go. There's lots of combat that can be very, very difficult. You're sword fighting. You're trying to find new power-ups to access doors you couldn't get to before. You're trying to uncover the map. There's boss fights. And here are the things I'm liking. The art style is really, really cool. The animation is really, really fluid. Even on kind of less high-end computers, it still runs really well. Looks beautiful and runs at 60 frames on Xbox and PlayStation 5. Basically, you can play it on Switch. Apparently, the port's really good. This game's available everywhere, accessible to everyone. It's very, very difficult on its default difficulty. But instead of just choosing easy, medium, hard, you can go in and there's a ton of gameplay sliders. So if, look, I'm loving the game, but the parry timing's a little off for me, I can tweak it. And that's what I did. And I was able to, within 5 minutes, this wasn't like an OCD situation, I was able to tailor the difficulty where I was having fun, yet still being challenged, which is something you don't get in a lot of games. You have to like cheese it or just bang your head against the wall. I don't find the latter fun. Some people do. And I also don't
I don't either.
God moding, because then what am I even doing here? I paid money for this. So I'm loving it, and I'm finding secrets, and they're timing they're pacing the doling out of superpowers at a really good moment. They're teaching me here's how I know when I like a game. I'm going into the battle places, like the guy who teaches you how to do those combos and learning the combos because I'm enjoying the combat. And that is usually not my jam. The last game I did that on was a game I think you would love, Keith, the Metroidvania. Have you ever heard of the game Guacamelee?
No.
Quick side note. I'm sure it's on Game Pass. You need to play it. It's a Metroidvania where you play a lucha libre, and as you power up, instead of getting power-ups, you learn new finishers. It's like a cartoon Mexican lucha libre, batshit crazy Metroidvania. It's so Keith Varney, it's the Keith Varneyest of games.
I'm just playing the Tomb Raider series for the 13th time.
Guacamelee, write that down. I think it's your jam. You probably get it for like $2 nowadays. I might buy it for you, in fact. Anyway, and most surprisingly, the narrative is pretty interesting. Instead of being the aforementioned Prince of Persia, you're one of the Prince of Persia's elite bodyguards. Something happens to there's a false flag operation takes place, and the prince is kidnapped, and now I'm seeking the prince. But the castle I'm seeking him in, some timey-wimey type of things have taken place. And so I haven't yet, but I might be getting time manipulation powers in this game. Really awesome. And it's short. I think it's only about 20 hours, which in these days of 1,800-hour games is very refreshing. Like I said, I'm really enjoying myself. High recommend for the Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown.
Okay.
Available today, I believe. That brings us to Weekly Rad, Keith. Just anything that's exciting you about this week or has excited you about the past week that is positive and upbeat is what we need in our lives.
You know what? I'll tell you this. It's NFL playoff time.
It is.
And there are two things that I love dearly about NFL playoff time. Mm-hmm. One is bad weather games, cold weather games. The game in Kansas City was great. Awesome. Looking forward to the Buffalo game this afternoon. Give me more snow. Give me more cold.
Give me shattering helmets.
Just give me all of the fun weather chaos. I find that delightful. I love to sit on my couch and be warm while I watch people shiver because I'm apparently a sadist. Mm-hmm. And the other thing I enjoy every playoff year is the Dallas Cowboys choking. So that delighted me. So much fun. Mike, what did you enjoy this week?
Well, I have to just piggyback on that because, yes, watching the Dallas Cowboys just do exactly what they do. And I like storylines. What I like about the NFL, it doesn't happen to me in any other sport, really. And I love baseball, which I know you don't, but is the storylines, right? Even if my Eagles, who are sure to get their asses handed to them today, even though they should win this football game, regardless, there's always another story or a variety of stories in the NFL playoffs in the teams that make me want to start rooting for an underdog or a team. And
yeah.
Some of those have emerged. There's an interesting, compelling storyline about these Green Bay Packers who are sort of finding some sort of little magic, going on a Cinderella run, handing it to the Cowboys last night. You've got the Detroit Lions who have not won anything in like 30-some years. Who are finding something special. So
very exciting. Very happy. I'm rooting for Detroit moving forward.
There's sort of like the heel turn of Patrick Mahomes. Everybody used to love this guy, and now they're getting annoyed with him for reasons because he's great. Who knows?
Mahomes is fine. The heel turn was Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, yeah. Well, that guy's...
He went full heel.
Time, yeah. But for me, there's something different. I quickly want to mention. We've been pretty open and talked about our other jobs in this and our imposter syndrome and the way that it fights to just keep us depressed or to not give us, the full credit for different things. But, I used to talk about in my job, in different employment I've had, of how I have sort of a magic power where, and Keith's the same way, we learn software very quickly or get ourselves to a functional, if not mastery level and very, like we taught ourselves OBS and all kinds of different things. It's fun. It's a weird hobby, but it's a fun hobby. And usually I can say yes to something. Hey, do you know XYZ? And I'll say, yeah, sure, hire me. And then give myself 24 hours to learn it enough to do the job the next day. Which I used to think was really, or convince myself was dishonest or BS and that I was faking, blah, blah, blah. Point of my story here is that my current job, I got called into this meeting the other day, Keith, and they're like, hey, we have to ask you something. And I was like, oh, God. Of course, it goes right there. Like, what did they find out?
Right. What did I do? What did they discover? Caught me.
What did they discover? We discovered 18,000 hours of podcasts that must have taken place during work.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. No, and they said, okay, so let me be very vague about this. Actually, so we have a whole team, right, offshore that is working like in the sort of assembly line of the content we're creating. They're doing something offshore using the specific program to do all this stuff. Now, our powers that be over here think there are some some bottlenecks and some inefficiencies with that team. However, interestingly, nobody stateside knows what the hell they're doing, right? They're just all, so they can't say for sure. So they somehow, Keith, they said, hey, Mike, we're going to give you any of the resources you need fiscally or whatever to learn this program. We want you to become a master in this program that you've never used before because we know you're good at it. You have about 3 weeks, maybe a month. If you need longer, let us know, but about a month. Learn it, become a master of it, and then watch what they're doing and see if there are any ways to make it more efficient. Like, are we utilizing the program? Can we make things better? But I'm not spying on these people. But I was like, oh, why are you asking me? And they're like, because this is something you're really good at. We want you to like, so I'm now being asked to do the very thing that I thought was BS.
Well, that's the thing. Well, I mean, it's not BS if you learn it.
Right.
Right. And it's BS if you never figure out how to use it.
And they're like, this would stark fear in a lot of other people, whereas we think it'll excite you. And I was like, excite me? Oh, it sounds like an S ton of fun. Like learn a whole new program. Great. And not actually have to do the actual work. Just learn how to do the work. Oh, yeah, give me money for that.
Yeah.
So anyway, here's my point, kids. Stop listening to that weird voice that tells you you're bad at everything. It's just lying to you. It's just lying. It's taken me 40 some years to really start to understand it. It'll never go away. So you just have to turn it off. That's it. That's really the end of it. So that's my weekly rad, Keith. I'm not a complete loser, it turns out.
Well, that's a great place to land. Not a complete loser.
There are worse places to be.
Forget your imposter syndrome. Just do the job.
Just do the thing. Folks, until the next time we all get together, talk games, entertainment, or media, keep on doing the things you find fun. Don't let anybody yuck your yum. And keep on geeking on.